I came over this stamp today, and I have to say that's a very attractive and attention-grabbing piece of paper. It's from my animal stamp collection. In some respect, it's not that old. At least in the philatelic domain is not. The year is printed clearly. And I didn't have to guess it. 1977. It was the year of the snake in the Chinese zodiac. The fire snake make a wide range of friends, and for Cuba at that time, the best friend was no other than the Soviet Union. Today, Soviet Union is a long ago memory and looks like its place was taken over by China. But at that time, as a result of subsidies from the Soviet Union, people of Cuba under Fidel Castro were living reasonably well. Cuba's economy was following a centralized planned communist-style economic development closely resembling the Soviets. Private property was almost non-existent. The socialist revolution was followed by the ongoing United States embargo against the island. This stamp had a value of 2 centavos, dos centavos. In 1977, to have an idea, the Cuban peso was valued at about a US dollar or about a Soviet Union ruble. Sugar and tobacco products like cigars were among the leading Cuban exports. Times of growth ended in the 90s with the fall of the Soviet Union and the whole Eastern Bloc. After 1991, with the dissolution of Comecon, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, an Eastern Bloc trade organization, a period of decline and economic stagnation followed. The quality of life in Cuba deteriorated afterwards. This economic crisis was called Periodo Especial, or special period in English. It was reflected in big reductions of ration foods, energy and fuel. Shortages of many kinds were prevalent. Things improved somewhat after a decade once Venezuela, under Hugo Chavez, started trading with Cuba. Also, the Cuban-Russian relation resumed under Putin. As of 2018, Cuba has a new constitution that grants foreign direct investments, private property, and free market rights similar to the Chinese model. That is the one country, two systems. As a result, the private sector economy has increased substantially. From 2021, the Cuban government started allowing citizens to register small to medium-sized companies with up to 100 employees. But let's go back to 1977 when this stamp was issued. Sure, it was a time like no other. That year, the original Star Wars movie was released in the cinemas. Yes, back then, the cinemas had no competition like today's Netflix and others. But for those who remember video cassettes, on August 23rd, 1977, was introduced in the USA by RCA in collaboration with Matsushita Corporation of Japan, the first VHS-based VCR capable of recording 4 hours in LP long play mode. And that year, New York City suffered a massive blackout, and unfortunately some looting followed. Also that year, Trans-Alaska Pipeline started moving oil for the first time. No wonder the price for a gallon of gasoline was about 60 cents. A somber event that had broken the hearts of millions of fans across the globe was the death of King of Rock and Roll, none other than Elvis Presley, at his home in Memphis, Tennessee, in the month of August that year. In other events to be mentioned, Jimmy Carter was sworn as the 39th President of the United States on January 20th, 1977. It was Carter who allowed the transfer of the Panama Canal on September 7 the same year. And if you lived that year, you had the opportunity to cross the Atlantic in about only 3 hours for the first time in history. Of course, if one had the luck to find himself in the free world and had the financial means. Not for the communist world and not for the ordinary Cubans who used this stamp. Yes, that year Concorde entered the transatlantic flights to Washington Dulles Airport on May 24th and to New York JFK Airport on October 17. It seems the free world was by a big margin better than today's. Nowadays, you'll need at least 8 hours to accomplish the same route, and not counting the hassle and the hours before boarding. And we thought that everything will be faster in the future. At least in one aspect we were right. Now in retrospect, I come to think that perhaps the most important thing to happen that year was what is called the 1977 Trinity. The first mass-market ready-assembled personal computers had arrived. They were Commodore, the Apple, and the TRS-80 by Tandy Corporation, so by now this is Radio Shack. It really ushered the new era of personal computers from what I would argue today's smartphones and modern life around us is derived. And I reckon at least today's computers are much more faster. As you see this Cuban stamp, it has a picture of a black panther on it and writing Felinos del Zoológico de la Habana. 2 centavos stamp. Also, the scientific name in Latin, Panthera pardus, which is another name for the leopard, not to be confused with a similar looking jaguar. The leopard relies on his spotted pattern as he stalks and ambushes his prey. Leopards with black coats coloration are rare and happens because of certain genetic factors that stimulates the production of large amounts of the dark pigment melanin in its skin and fur. The melanin concentration vary even between members of the same litter. Leopards with completely black coats are in fact very rare. It's a coincidence that it shares the name with the controversial American Marxist-Leninist Party and Black Power political organization founded by college students in Oakland, California in 1966. The Cuban government had formed ties with Black Panther Party in the 60s, and many fugitive Black Panthers would find political asylum in Cuba. Within them it's counted Assata Shakur, an American political activist who was convicted for the murder of State Trooper Werner Foster during a shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike in 1973. She escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility for Women in New Jersey on November 2, 1979. After that, Asada was hiding in Pittsburgh. She then arrived in Cuba via Bahamas. In 1984, she was granted political asylum in Cuba, from where she even published a book titled Asada, an autobiography. She was also the step-aunt and godmother of Tupac Shakur, the best-selling music artist who sold more than 70 million records worldwide, and who it said that even dated the even bigger celebrity called Madonna. In 1991, Tupac had a song called Words of Wisdom dedicated to Assata Shakur. And back in 1977, who can forget the legendary Pele of the New York Cosmos Soccer Club, who won that year the U.S. Soccer Championship. Also, if we are into sports, that year Super Bowl 11 was won by Oakland Raiders versus Minnesota Vikings with a 32-14 score. And in World Series, New York Yankees beat LA Dodgers 4-2. And with that, I'm ending my presentation of this stamp with the hope that you learn something interesting from it. And please don't hesitate to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel so I can make more similar videos available. Until next time, stay warm.